Abir was my soul sister. We loved each other and had this unbreakable bond ever since that day we met at our mutual relative's wedding, hosted at my aunt's house, the one married to the sheikh. We told each other everything. We talked on the phone for hours and hours every single day. Of course, my mother was extremely jealous of our friendship. I was forbidden to be friends with her. When Abir called our home landline, if my mother answered, Abir had to change her tone of voice, even her accent, and of course, use a fake name. It was literally like having an affair. Her name was never to be mentioned in our household. The most important friendship I had growing up, my bestie, in the whole wide world, was a dangerous secret. If my mother found out that I was talking to her, which sometimes she did, I would get the electrical cord whipping until she saw blood. Only then would she stop. You think that would stop us? No fucking way. It was war. Us against her. I had to be resourceful. I bought a telephone. I'm talking about a landline here, of course. I dangled the longest phone cord that was ever created from my bedroom window on the third floor all the way down to an empty room on the ground floor of our house that no one ever used. I plugged the telephone into the wall jack in that empty room. Any passerby on the street could clearly see the beige cord dangling from outside of my parents' house, stretching from my bedroom window wall all the way down to the empty room on the ground floor. I took the risk anyway, hid under the covers in my bed, and whispered into the phone late at night after my mother went to sleep. When we were done with our phone call, and before my mother woke up in the morning, I would run downstairs, unplug the phone, pull the cord in, and hide the phone in one of the boxes in the storage closet. Nothing would stop us. Abir and I even developed a secret language and had codes for everything: people's names, events, any events such as weddings or parties we dreamed of going to, or even gossiping about, were always referred to as classes, school, or studying. Any boy names were automatically converted to girl names. We would manipulate the words in a way that no one else would understand. When I moved around with my father, when he was posted to the embassy in Saudi Arabia and Qatar, we would exchange written letters. Remember those? There was no official postal mail system in Yemen. It would take 2 or 3 months for a letter to arrive through travelers. The letter would have to be secretly delivered to a friend's house and later handed to me at school, so my mother did not know that Abir was writing to me. By the time I read her letter, the stories she had shared were already outdated, but I cherished those letters. I would reread them over and over and hide them under my bed so my mother would not see or know we were in contact. I would save all my allowance money to buy a calling card so I could dial internationally and call her once in a while. We were relentless. Nothing would stop us from being friends. She was my refuge. When my mother beat me until I bled, I would call her and tell her all about it. Abir had the traditional strict Middle Eastern parents, but she was not violently abused the same way to the same degree that I was. Somehow, in those tragic conversations, there were also a lot of giggles, a lot of daydreaming about the future and fantasizing about a better life. When we were older and married to rich, handsome men, how our husbands must be best friends, how we would live next door to each other and finally be able to hang out and socialize, wear makeup, high heels, and nice clothes. We were in our 20s now, and none of those dreams had come true. Abir had married a handsome, cool guy from a prominent family. Even though her marriage was arranged, she was actually excited about her husband, and she was in love with him. I, on the other hand, was not. I was still a virgin in this strange marriage situation. The societal pressure was getting intense. Both families were being exceptionally patient with me, and by known tradition, I was pushing it. He was also getting pressured to prove his masculinity by consummating the marriage and showing the world that he was a real man. Every morning, he would get a call from his older brother to investigate. Did you guys do it yet? Are you a man yet? It was the 40th day of my arranged marriage life. I got permission from my husband to spend the night at my parents' house. How ironic that it felt like a break to be there. I was talking to Abir over the phone late at night. Despair was creeping in at this point, and I was starting to reach a breaking point. I was explaining to her that I had run out of excuses and that I felt that the world was closing in on me. I'll never forget the two words she responded with: just leave. Those two magical words, just leave, kept ringing in my ear. It was one of those moments in life where you just needed someone to give you permission because you couldn't give it to yourself. It had never crossed my mind that I could just leave. Just leave, I wondered. How can I just leave? She said yes. Go back and pack your new bridal clothes in a suitcase and take a taxi and go back to your parents' house. But what would my parents do to me? I thought to myself as I heard the gurgling sound of the madah coming from the living room. What would people say? Abir and I remained silent over the phone. I heard the gurgling sound of the madah coming from the living room. We didn't have answers to those questions, but we also didn't have any other solution. Yet that was exactly what I did. The next morning, I went back to my husband's house. I packed my clothes in a suitcase and took a taxi back to my parents' house. My parents were furious with me. I had now brought shame to the family. Married for 40 days without consummation, and now asking for a divorce? It was unheard of. They felt humiliated and didn't know what to do with me. My mother told me that I broke my father, that he couldn't look people in the eye anymore. I was to be completely locked up in my room and isolated from any socializing, so society would forget about me and what I had done. There was a new rumor being spread every single day. One that I wasn't a virgin and I was away in hiding because I was too scared that I would be found out. Or another that my husband found me cheating on him with another man. In addition to all that, now I had tainted the reputation of all of my younger sisters. Who would want to marry them? The word on the social scene was that we were loose young girls that lived in Western countries and became Americanized. That's what you get when you educate women, my uncle would say. For the next year, there were intense negotiations between the men of both families for me to either return to my husband or to finalize the divorce. There were family interventions being held with more than 20 family members of only men getting together to threaten or what they would call convince me to go back. But somehow, that tiny step I took that day, when packing my stuff and leaving, left a powerful imprint within me. I felt a profound shift. For the first time in my life, I had a taste of my own power and what I was capable of doing. I held my position and firmly told everyone that I refused to go back to that marriage that was not of my choosing to begin with. It was their mess and theirs to clean up. I made it very clear to everybody that if they were to force me back, I would just come back home running again and repeat the cycle as many times as it took, even if it cost me my life. I didn't care anymore. I think they saw deep in my soul that I was telling the truth. I was desperate enough to risk my life. The Prime Minister was not used to hearing the word no, especially from, in his eyes, a worthless young woman. So he sent his direct report, the foreign minister, my father's boss, to deliver a message directly to my father. The message was that if I was to return back to the prime minister's son, my father would be promoted to an ambassador role and would be assigned at the U.S. Embassy in Washington, D.C. Pretty much the hottest ticket in diplomacy town, the most competitive and desired position to hold as a diplomatic official representing the Yemen government. I was a 19-year-old disempowered and marginalized young woman standing up against the most powerful men in a corrupt country run by dictators. No one was by my side, not even the women in my own family. I didn't have any role models to look up to or support of a community of any sort. I was slut-shamed and locked in solitary confinement in my own bedroom for 1 full year. Yet my brave little soul held its ground and said, "No way." I demanded to be free and was willing to do whatever it took. Miraculously, I did get the divorce, and my father did not get that promotion. This was an excerpt from my upcoming memoir. Stay tuned for more. P.S. My memoir is complete and has been sitting on my laptop for months now, just sitting there staring at me like, now what? So if you know a publisher or can connect me to Oprah or Reese Witherspoon's book club, I will owe you free yoga classes for life. Please subscribe for free to receive the next chapter.